Now comes the fun part. Oh wow. Alright, so we're going to take, I'm going to see how this fits in there. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, this will be good enough. One of the other things that John and Pete developed, and they developed this on their own. They didn't ask, or that Bob Rosand didn't have anything to do with this part. They developed a template because they were making so many of these. They developed a template that would allow them to be consistently even with how they were making these. So, when I worked at Paxton Lumber, people used to ask me all the time, you know, what kind of lathe should I buy? I mean, even today, people who are new, you know, ask me, what kind of lathe should I buy, or what kind of, you know, what kind of tools should I get, and stuff like that. And the same answer I give them every single time is, buy as much as you can afford. If you decide you don't want to, you know, you just want to start out small, you know, start out small. My first lathe was actually a drill press. That's how I started turning. I turned 20 pens on a drill press before I even got to a lathe. The only time I ever turned on a lathe was when I took the class at Woodcraft on how to turn a pen. Woodsmith, issue number 108, shows you how to make a lathe out of a drill press. And that's what I did. And it worked just fine. I didn't have any problems with it. And as a matter of fact, when my grandmother passed, she was buried with the first pen that I ever made, because that's who I gave it to. So, you know, there's always something. I don't know why I'm fussing with this. That's all going to go away anyway. All right, so back in the day, like I said, back when this was really important that we do things the right way, or consistently. Pete Stiglich made this little template. Let me hold it here. Basically, it's got the small side, which you're just turning a taper. This is the small side, this is the large side. This is the side that will go into the hole that I made in the globe. So what you do basically is you just take, and there's little notches in there. And when you watch Rosand's video, you'll see that what he does is he does a succession of teardrops, going from fairly small to longer to even longer, and then now see, I did that before I turned the taper, but I'm just demonstrating right now. And then what remains up here is the cup you make to go into the finial. So what I'm going to do now, the important part of this is you've got it turned round in between centers, and you've got it tightly gripped up here, because what you have to do in order to make this successful is you have to take this away in order for this to be successful. And you can see it's a little bit out of round, but it's not bad considering what we're going to do with it. So what I'm going to do, I slowed the speed down just a little bit. I probably ought to spin that back up a little bit. This is where your tool control comes in. This is where you learn. Oh, one very important part I don't want to forget. These two notches on either side, they're your measurements. There we go. These are your measurements. So at the top of the top one here, all this space up front, let's see where you want to go. You want to go basically like this. Take your parting tool. I'm using a Bedan. Make sure that's the right size. Okay. So now we can start turning the taper, and I'm going to leave the tailstock up just for a little bit until I get it squared back away. Okay. Now, the one cardinal rule I'm breaking, and it's my rule, I mean, you know, it's something I set forth years ago, just for my own edification, was, and I don't remember who taught me, but when you want your line to be straight and you want your line to be smooth, don't do this. Hold the tool against your body and move your body. Okay, and even when I have, you know, when I'm only using one hand, which in this process you do, you use one hand. You don't have a choice. Now, that's relatively straight. So I'm happy with that. So now we come back over here and I move the notch to where this end is. One here, and one here. Now, when I talk about the skew being the devil's tool, I use a skew for this process. You can use a small detail gouge if you want. Here, I'm sorry. You can use a small detail gouge if you want, but I prefer to use the round skew because it gives me a little bit more control. So now, all we're going to do is I'm going to change the angle of the tool rest just a little bit. I'm just going to take and I'm going to lay this up here. Well, first thing I'm going to do is take a little cut. That way I know where to stop. And you know, a lot of times when I do this demonstration, I get asked the question, well, why are you hogging out so much wood with that little skew? It's practice. That's what I'm doing, is I'm getting my stroke down. Because normally I'll do 2 or 3 of these a night or a day, depending on how much time I have. You know what? I'm going to lower this just a hair. Go. Okay, so at this point, now this one should be a lot smaller, but I'm not going back. So, you remember, I think there were a couple of guys here that said something about one more cut. And remember how that turned out. So, something else to remember. Now, this lathe is very good about this. My lathe, not so much. If you have a spindle on here and you're just about done with it and you turn the lathe off, the minute you turn the lathe back on, it's going to go whing, and it's going to snap. From the torque.
Is that the badan you're using?
Yes.
Do you ride the bevel on that?
No. It's more used more like a scraper. Now, when you're cutting, I would start on the bevel, but it works just like a parting tool. You start on the bevel, you position it where you want it, and then when you bring it down, it does what you want it to do. Hopefully, most time. All right, so now. Okay, so that will fit in this hole with any luck. Alright, so I want to, let's see from here. Whoop. Gosh darn it. This is a little too close to the thing, but to the chuck. But what I do is I just cut this just a little bit. Now, and there's that part.
Sand those?
Yeah, I would sand and finish it normally. This demo takes long enough. Okay, so now we need to make the finial part. And again, this is where my other jaws come in handy, because I have, well, that one's too small anyway. I brought pen blanks for this because it was what I had readily available. You know, I am so envious of you retired guys. You get to be at home all day and work in your shop all you want and do all the cool things that
You get busier, keep training better.
Alright, so now this can be whatever you want it to be. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to first thing I'm going to do is finish this off. Make that nice and smooth. And then take the badan and I'm going to figure out. So right about there, okay? Now you can do this with a parting tool, you can do it with whatever you want. Okay. Now see, the nice part about this is now you just do this.
Try it.
There we go. Well enough. And again, let's take the gouge. Make it be a little, actually I'm going to use a skew, make it a little concave so that it fits the roundness of the globe better. To take this, okay, so let us take this, and I'm going to part a little bit of that off, if it'll work without snapping. There we go. I'm going to take the skew, a little divot right in the center. Actually, it's kind of a big divot, but that's okay. Because the next thing we're going to do and this is something that Rosand will show you. Now, he uses tiny little drill bits. I use a fish hook that's been chopped off right here. Okay, we're going to drill that little hole in there like so. You know, I sharpened that skew right before I came. Oop. This wood just doesn't want to cooperate. Alright, so now, let me take, I should have gone all the way through. Alright, there's the hole. So now, gosh darn it. Go. We take that hook that we used. Of course, it didn't go in there very straight. You take that, push it the rest of the way in, and now you have the eye. I don't know how well you can see that. So then I just take a small bit of CA glue, and because of that divot, the CA glue puddles right there, and put this in there, like so, and then take some CA, just drip it down in there a little bit. Because this hole's bigger, you can certainly see what you're doing down there. So now I'm going to take and put some dab of glue around there. Press that in. And there you go. That's what it looks like. Like that. And it's lightweight enough that, now, the hole's not straight up here, and there's a lot of things that are wrong with this, but I was here to show the technique, so, rather than the finished product. So, there you go.
Thank you.
Any questions?